Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Pastors Roundtable. I am your host, Ryan Latham, and I'm so excited for this conversation in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of chaos, whatever you want to call it. It's a great conversation for us to talk about how do we lead teams, how do we lead ourselves from home in this different environment. And I know that depending on what state you're in around the nation, some of us are kind of phasing out of this time back into semi-regular. A lot of us are still in lockdown for a few more weeks, potentially even months. And so this conversation might hit you a little bit differently depending on where you're at. But for a lot of us, we really do feel like we're probably gonna have some form of modified at-home, in-person, office relationship probably for quite a while. And for a lot of churches, it might be a continual thing that might last for quite a long time. And so I feel like this conversation is still helpful for us, no matter what situation you are in the midst of this COVID stuff. A lot of great things to listen to and talk to. So Andy, why don't you go ahead and just jump a minute here, just kind of introduce yourself to us, tell us a little bit about your spiritual, your ministry journey, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I am the executive pastor at a church about 30 minutes south of Portland, Oregon. We're in what's called the Willamette Valley. I've been here for about a year and a half, and I have the privilege of serving as executive pastor. Is kind of a vague term. It can mean a lot of different things, but I serve by leading the staff and then leading finances here. Before I was here, I spent nearly a decade in family ministries, where some of it I was a youth pastor, some of it I was a youth and children's pastor, and in the last few years, I actually oversaw a team that served the next gen department at a church. And so I've been doing that for just a little over a decade in full-time ministry. And so yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing as far as ministry journey. I did a master's degree at Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida, that focuses on ministerial leadership, which was really cool as well. And then on a personal note, I've got a beautiful wife. We've been married. It'll be 7 years in November. And then we have 2 children that I hope I can survive with through the rest of the pandemic. So
I think a lot of us are kind of in the same situation there. It's been really interesting. I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed watching all the different shows that have moved online, even like Jimmy Fallon, and his kids interrupting him. And, speaking of which, he interviewed Russell Wilson and his, in the middle of the interview, it's pretty much a live Zoom like this, and his kids come in because they lost a tooth, one of his daughters lost a tooth. And it's like, you're interviewing like Russell Wilson, for the Tonight Show, and your kid comes, it's just part of the gig right now, man. So you've been involved in leading staff members for quite a few years at different levels. So why don't you talk a little bit about that transition, what that's been like, what was it like before a little bit, and what are some things that you've been picking up, trying, doing in this transition time?
That's a great way to phrase that. I think what's been interesting about this and kind of the shift that we're making is not just how do we shift this way during the pandemic, but also how are we thinking about the future? So do we really need all of this office space that we once thought we needed? And I think a lot of us are in that boat too, that it's almost been like a nice test case for all of us in that. And so like most of us that work in church, the church environment, I think many of us are very accustomed to the day-to-day walking in people's offices, getting to catch up that way, and putting a lot of relational emphasis in a very casual nature, and that being a part of the work week. Well, when you shift to doing everything via video, via Zoom, all of those things change. And I think for many of us that have kind of been in our boat, we've been asking the question, okay, how do I do this? What do I need to shift in my own leadership and the way that I do things to make this work? And honestly, the first thing that's been the most helpful was I just decided from the beginning of this to find some people who had done this before. We have a lot of people talking about how to work from home, how they're doing it. And many of us, if you're like me, this is the first time I've ever had to work via video. I mean, I telecommunicate with my family because they live 3,000 miles away. And we do that kind of stuff, but this is not a normal thing. And so I've got a really good friend that his whole organization, he's a part of a large multi-level marketing program that all they do is via telecommunication. I mean, that's it. I mean, he never sees those people in person, maybe once a year. That's it, at a conference or something. And so we began to talk to him and pick up best practices. But the first thing that we started doing, I think that was important for us, that's helped it work for us, is we just admitted, I have no idea what I'm doing from a transition, and I'm going to need to talk to somebody who has a clue, because just figuring this thing out on my own is not wise. And there are people that have been doing this for years. I mean, this isn't new. This isn't by any stretch a new concept. It's just new for churches. And so I found some of my greatest help being outside of those churches, or outside of the church people that I know, and talking to people who've just lived this reality for several years and been successful at it, building teams. The second thing that was really helpful for us, not just listening to an outside voice, but hearing, hey, you're going to need to rethink your meetings. If you or anybody else is used to a normal church culture, on either Monday or Wednesday, there's like a giant meeting where everybody that's paid walks in, and we sit at an awkwardly long table, and we talk about life and what's going on in our ministries, and we're excited about it. And then we eventually get to business, and we kind of toss ideas around. That's like a normal dynamic. And that just does not translate to everybody sitting in their home at Zoom, on a computer. And so we really began to rethink our meetings. And we'd begun to do this actually before we went to this platform. We were reworking how we're doing some things, but this just kind of escalated it, made it happen a lot quicker. So what we committed to was more meetings that were shorter with less people. And what I mean by that is there are just very few things that there's 10 people who work in our office, including myself. There are very few things that all 10 of those people need to be in the conversation about. So we meet for 30 minutes once, or actually twice a week right now, to just check in with everybody, make sure everybody is being resourced the way they need to be. But everything else is with 2 to 3 people. Hey, how can we resource you? How can we help you? And so we've committed to more meetings, but they're shorter and with the right people. And when you do that, especially in this environment, I feel like we've been able to make most of our staff just so much more efficient, working for the bottom line, where we're going, what we want to accomplish. And so I think that has made a big difference for us. And so, we've been saying that in lots of conversations, more meetings with less people in shorter times. And we've actually been having our staff do that with our volunteers. It's not just what we're doing from the executive pastor to the team. It's, hey, spend more time with your people. Jump on Zoom, jump on FaceTime. Make sure that you're connecting with them, talking to them, helping them resource, because we still have people serving our church. The next thing is scheduling out care for the staff. Scheduling out care for the staff. We don't realize how much we care for our staff by just being in the room and joking around with people, making people feel a part of the culture and the conversation. When we do that on Zoom, it's just not the same. And so finding time to stop, make sure that people on your staff feel like, hey, you matter. Hey, before we jump into business today, let's take 5 minutes and not talk about the church, not talk about work. Tell me what's going on in your world. And that's been, I think it's been very helpful, especially for those people who are running ragged, for all of the people who went from leading worship on Sunday morning to producing a television show throughout the week now, which is, for those of us who aren't doing live, for those of us who are doing post-production services, that's what we're doing. And so, I mean, it's a different thing. And so making sure that they feel resourced, making sure that they feel cared for, and helping them focus on, hey, some of this stuff is going to end, but we've still got to make sure that Sunday happens, and making sure they feel encouraged to do that, I think, is important. And then the last couple of things are figuring out just consistent communication for us has been important. I've actually sent a lot less email than I used to do. And that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but we chose, or at least I did for me communicating with my team, I do communication one of two ways. It's either via text message or it's on a Zoom call. The second thing is that it's consistent communication through the week with each staffer. Each staff member connects with me at least 2 times a week to make sure that they feel resourced, to make sure that they feel like they're getting what they need to do their job. And it's just a very constant rhythm. That's what we've tried to create. Now, it's not perfect, but it has helped them still feel connected to where we're going and what's happening. And then the last thing that I would say, and I mean, there's other things that we can talk about as far as figuring out project management, that kind of stuff. But I think the biggest thing is learning to be flexible in this season, not just in scheduling, not just in what we're doing as far as logistically, but being flexible in, okay, what's everybody's role now? What can each of these people that used to be paid to do something that was directly connected to Sunday morning learn so that they can still add value to your team? I think you actually did a podcast on basically that concept, rerouting staff members. It's so important because these people are valuable. And when we go back to service in a building, they'll still continue to be valuable. But what do we do in the 8, 12? I'm in Oregon, so we could be doing this forever, so we don't even have we have kind of a plan, but we don't have any dates lined up. We don't know when we're going back. How do we keep those people adding value to the team? Because they want to add value. They just don't know how. So we took our youth pastor and our guest services coordinator, and we have given them really quick training in how to edit in Final Cut. For those of you who don't know, it's video editing software. They're unlike what some people think, not all millennials can just spit out a video. And so we're not all tech people. Some of us are, but some of us are not. And so we've trained a couple of different people on staff how to do things that they've never done before. And it's that flexibility of keeping people that want to add value to the organization and not just fill a job in a position to add value. And so people who don't want to learn and who don't want to shift with you ultimately are just in it for a paycheck. But the people who really love your church, love the organization that they serve, will do what it takes to make sure that they're making a difference. That's been huge for us.
Yeah, I know quite a few churches I've talked with, they've said, if you've ever looked at a soundboard, you're basically going to be running sound, especially like multi-site churches, some of them are trying to get their campus pastors, to speak live. And so that, that's a church that's now not just recording one, but they're recording 3, 4, campus pastors speaking. So it's like, man, you've looked at a soundboard. You're the new sound guy for your campus pastor's sermon, right? It's like, everybody. And so I love what you're saying about those constant contacts. And so talk to me just a little bit about what that looks like as you're leading multiple staff members. And are those pre-scheduled, every single week, Tuesday from 1 to 1:30, I meet with the youth pastor, and then 1:30 to 2, I meet with the children's pastor. What does those mean? Is it kind of ebbs and flow as the needs? What does that kind of look like scheduling? And what does it pragmatically look like when you're meeting with those people?
Yeah, so it does ebb and flow just because needs are different from week to week. So this weekend, we're doing some drive-by pickups for Mother's Day. Families can come by and pick up a special gift from our church to moms, but we've also got kids buckets that are getting picked up with some curriculum stuff, some different things for them to do, different activities. We do that about every other week. Sometimes it's communion pickup. Sometimes it's a kid's gift that we're giving them. And so with weeks like that, sometimes I meet with our children's pastor on Monday afternoons. Sometimes I'm meeting with her on Thursday afternoons. Most meetings happen on Monday and Thursday. Where those staffers park changes just depending on the week. So today I met with our youth pastor about an hour before this meeting and talked about how we were going to reshape some things in youth ministry for the youth ministry when they come back. Ironically, we hired a new youth pastor like 4 weeks before this happened. So he has now been an online youth pastor longer here than he has been the youth pastor. So that's kind of unique. So we're working with him. It's very consistent in what we're there to do. The time flexes though. So I really believe that people should know what you're going to talk about before you enter into a meeting. People should have a clue. Now, I'm not the guy who's sending out a schedule, but when they get a text from me or they get a FaceTime call asking to set up a meeting time, it's, hey, I want to talk to you about this at 9:30 to 10, or, hey, I want to talk to you two people about this thing from 9:30 to 10, and making it just really, really clear that's the goal.
Yeah, that's good because, we've all been in that moment where we just get the text that says, hey, I need to meet with you. And then for like 4 days, we're like sweating bullets, you know, like, what is this about? Like, is this the end? Is it over? And then we walk in and it's like, hey man, you want to help me put up this sign in my office real quick?
Yeah.
It's like, I've been killing myself for like 3 days and you just want to have me help you put up the sign. So it's like, what I mean? So I love the idea of making sure that there's at least, not necessarily a detailed schedule, but at least a direction for that conversation. That's nice.
Yeah, it lets them prepare. It lets them know kind of, I never want a staffer to be caught off guard. So even when we're in larger settings, if I know that I'm going to ask our youth pastor a question for us to dive into in a meeting, he knows. He's not walking into a staff meeting going, should I have had this ready to go? There's just that sad I'm going to die look that I would prefer not to be in our meetings. And so, I don't want people to panic. I want people to appear as confident and as prepped as they are. And the only way to do that is to never catch them off guard. Now, occasionally things come up that you have to deal with that people weren't expecting. But if they have the ability to know something's coming, then it's all the more helpful.
That's great. So as you guys look ahead, for us in Oklahoma, we've already moved into phase 1. I know a lot like Texas, Georgia, a lot of states have already kind of moved into the early stages of phase 1. You said you guys still don't really have a timeline, but as you guys do begin to think a little bit ahead, what are you sensing? What are you feeling when it comes to like team development, that office interactions? What do you feel like are some elements that you might keep, or you just can't wait to get rid of?
No, that's a great question. I think that there's a lot of benefit to having in-person interaction, and I think that there are some of those elements that we'll move towards. But like everything, there's some things that we're going to keep out of this season. Zoom, whether it's FaceTime that you choose to use, Zoom, Google Duo, or whatever else that there is for video teleconferencing, I don't think this will go away in just the ease of use at some level. I mean, there's just a benefit to this. We've been asking the question, our staff has grown a little bit with not full-time roles, but part-time roles. And the question has been, where do we park these people? Because our offices are limited. What do we do? And that's, most churches that are nearing 1,000 people sit in that question, because there is a time where you stop hiring full-time people and you start racking up part-timers for a season. And we're actually getting a lot more comfortable with the idea that, hey, they don't need an office. They can work from home. They can do 30 hours a week in their home. And if I do need them, they're 10 minutes away. They can drive in, or they can just jump on a Zoom call if I need to just talk with them for 20 minutes instead of having them go back and forth. So, I mean, I think for us, we definitely want that engagement. We do monthly breakfasts together as a staff. Like we really focus on the relational aspect. But I think that if you do a really good job having intentional relational time, there is less of a requirement to you always having to be in the office together. I don't know if that like directly answers your question. But for us, I mean, that is what we're discovering. Taking intentional time for relationship allows you to be less relational in the meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, even the more you use Zoom, the more, I mean, I've been working on a virtual team for a year and a half, or more, exclusively pretty much. And, it takes a little bit longer, to kind of build that friendship or whatever. But, when you look at, the 5 functions of a healthy team, it's like, it takes a little bit of more strategy to get into those upper levels of conflict and achievement, those upper levels, but really, they can happen, right? But it just looks different. And so I think just defining, I've got people that I call friends that I've like never met in person. I mean, it's all virtual. It's always been text, it's always been video meetings. And so I think just redefining that a little bit and saying that like, that's okay. Like that's totally fine, And so, but yeah, I mean, I think redefining that a little bit. I mean, I was talking to a business owner yesterday, and they were just like we were saying, they're in that kind of that flux zone where it's like they're outgrowing their building in terms of staff. And he was thinking about having to spend, way tons of money to build out this extra building to add staff members. And now he's going, man, I don't think I need to do that. Now before this, he would have never thought that this home business would have worked for him. But now that he's doing it, he is forced to do it. Now he's like, man, it actually might work out, and it would save me a ton of money on real estate, all of those things. And so I love what you're saying is that it just opens up the door for us to think a little bit differently. So yeah, what are some other things that you guys are thinking up, what has worked for you guys? What are you guys thinking about, maximizing, leveraging, these online staff development opportunities?
Yeah. So there's a few different things that we're thinking through as far as what it looks like when we come back into this next season. As the office does open back up, we'll definitely do some things like we used to do them as far as full staff meetings. But whether it's via video or not, I don't think we will ever go back to doing more than a 25, 30-minute large staff meeting. As the staff grows, it's actually more important in allowing those closer connections to happen, because there's just some things that come out of those that are helpful. We've got some young guys on staff that have been in ministry as long as they've been employed here, and that's it. And them being able to sit down and talk to several people on our staff that have been in ministry for over a decade, that 20-minute conversation is worth more than 2 hours sitting listening to people talk about meetings that happen. I remember I sat on staff at a church one time, and we were in a meeting, and it was very important on this staff that everybody came to the staff meeting. And I remember I clocked it on my watch. I sat in a meeting where we talked for 25 minutes about where the baptismal towels were. And I just remembered thinking, man, I wonder how much money is being spent right now with all, there are probably 15 people in the room, with all the people sitting around that table, listening to us talk about baptismal towels. And that's the thing. It was a conversation that needed to be had between a couple of people. It didn't need to be had with 15 people. And I think protecting those larger meetings to only a few things. So I lead staff meetings all but once a month, and our lead pastor leads one once a month that only focuses on leadership development and vision casting. That's the primary meeting monthly that he leads. And that meeting is obviously about community on staff and the culture on staff. And those are great times to have all 10 of us in the room and to really receive from our pastor. Those are great moments for us to all be together. But when we're talking about things that are strategic, unique to a department, or logistical, unique to a department, the fewer people, the better, whether that's via video or here in the office. And so I think that's one thing that'll shift. I think we're also seeing, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love taking staff members out to eat and getting to do that. But, you know, when you see your food bill get cut by like 80%, you go, hey, that's awesome. You know,
there's something here.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what if everything didn't have to be a $30 lunch between two people, you know, and I'm not the guy who says you can, you know, I know some churches are very tight on whether or not you can take staff out. I don't think you need it like that. I think that there is a theology of food, and there's something that happens when we break bread with each other that's healthy. But it's really nice for that not to be, you know, on the church every Tuesday. You know, there's a benefit to that. And those same things can happen over a cup of coffee or scheduling a Zoom time. And honestly, it helps us be better stewards of the money God gave us. I know that as I said that, there are probably people who stopped watching this video because they love their Tuesday Mexican food day. You know, like, I get it. It's like a little badge of honor. We don't make a ton of money in ministry, but we get our Mexican food Tuesday.
But we do.
I understand. I get it. But there is a reality that you can be a little bit smarter in how you reward your staff when there's more money sitting in that account.
Yep. That's great. That's great. Well, any last words? We kind of wrap it up here. As you know, as we're, again, all different stages. Some people are kind of coming out of this thing. Some people are still in no man's land. Any words of encouragement or final thoughts here?
Yeah, I would just say, the tension for a lot of us is to just do what we need to do and do business and kind of put our heads down. And I think that whether we're talking about people who serve our church in non-paid roles or paid roles, they still need to hear that we love them as leaders, that they're valuable, and that they're making a difference. And those are things regardless of the season, and even more so when we feel isolated, that people just need to hear. And so whether it's shooting them a text or just making sure you pick up a phone and call them once a week to say, hey, you're killing it today, just so you know. I think sometimes we forget, the higher up in leadership you go, I think you forget how much hearing from your boss that you're doing a great job matters. How much what that does for you in your soul to know and to be validated like that, how much that matters. And I think that we have to bring ourselves back to a place where we bring that moment, that emotion to remembrance, so that we invest in our people that way.
Yeah, I love that. I love you. I love that. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing all you're doing. We're excited for all of you guys that are navigating this season. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Stay in there. You know, be encouraged. Stay strong. We're believing that a lot of the things that we've learned in this season are going to make us better and stronger in our team development. And so thank you, Andy, for your time. And we'll see you guys next episode.